Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank the organizers for inviting me to stand here and tell you the amazing story of Professor Erich Ingber. As you can see my titles on the slide, I am from the Department of Dermatology. I am a dermatologist, a skin doctor, working in Hadassah University Hospital in Jerusalem. In order to understand why Erich Ingber's story is an amazing story, I have to tell you some backgrounds that I think that some or most of them you know very well. Although Jews accounted for only 0.8% of the residents in Germany, at least 16% of German physicians were Jewish, and about 25% of dermatologists, of skin doctors, were Jewish at the end of 1932 and in the very beginning of 1933. And if you look on the slide on the different specialities, you can see that gynecologists are about 11%, pediatrics 10%, and so on. But most or the biggest number is dermatologists. And the question is why so many dermatologists in Germany and in Austria were Jewish. But this question I can't answer now because I have a lecture on it. I gave it a year ago in the Holocaust and Medicine meeting in Western Galilee Hospital. This is an annual meeting in the last May. But many dermatologists were Jewish, and the percentage is going between 20% to 30%. It depends how you determine a Jewish. If you mean Jewish, that his Jewish father and mother were Jewish, or if he had Jewish roots. And as you know, that the Nazis considered them also Jewish. And if you look of the different cities and the number of percentage of Jewish dermatologists, you see that in Berlin it was more than 50%. In Breslau, it was 66%. In Frankfurt am Main, it was 61%. So many dermatologists were Jewish. Now, in the very beginning of 1933, almost immediately after Hitler came to power, the physicians started to leave Germany. And it was many times before the anti-Jewish legislation. I want to remind you that so-called Nuremberg laws was announced in September 1935. So almost 2 years earlier, physicians started to leave Germany. And the question is why? Why they decided so early to leave Germany? Even dermatologists that were in very high positions. The answer is that shortly after Hitler came to power, the SA, so-called stormtroopers, went into hospitals and arrested Jewish physicians at work. And this is well documented that they even take out from surgery rooms Jewish surgeons in the middle of surgery of non-Jewish, and they arrested them in the middle of the surgery. The SA, most of them were brutal hooligans. They enjoyed very much to humiliate respected citizens or intellectuals, especially if they were Jewish or communist. The arrested physicians were tortured, and some of them were beaten to death. This introduction is to understand what was amazing about the story of Professor Erich Ingber. I want to tell you the fate of one of these physicians of these physicians, it is Professor Max Lifkowitz. Professor Max Lifkowitz, he was Assistant Medical Director of the Department of Internal Medicine at the Moabit Hospital in Berlin. He was forced by the SA brutal hooligans in the middle of a visit in the department to crawl around in the yard on his hands and knees and to bark like a dog. Later, he was forced to stand against the wall while the SA stormtroopers shot bullets around his counter, like, you know, in the circus, the knife throwers are throwing the knives. And then he was beaten hardly. A month later, after he relatively recovered, he immigrated to Palestine or to Israel, where shortly he became the director of internal medicine department in Bielinsson Medical Center in Petah Tikva, which is a city located in about 12 kilometers northeast to Tel Aviv. This is one of the satellite cities of Tel Aviv. I finished my residency in dermatology in the Bielinsson Medical Center. This is today the Bielinsson University Medical Center, affiliated to the Faculty of Medicine of Tel Aviv University. And this is the main auditorium in the hospital, and named after Max Lifkowitz. He died in 1971, and it's called Lifkowitz Auditorium. Then, as I said, the physicians started to emigrate as early as the beginning of 1933 from Germany, and also Jewish dermatologists emigrated from Germany. Most of them emigrated to United States, about 40%, and I only will tell you that they built up the dermatology in United States. The level of dermatology in Germany and in Austria or in Europe in general was much, much higher than in United States. And these dermatologists who emigrated to United States, he built up the modern dermatology in the United States, and about 30% of them immigrated to Palestine or to Israel. A small number of Jews, or physicians, or Jews in general, remained in Germany, either in hiding or with fake documents. So to stay in Berlin or in Germany at all, it wasn't so unique. But the people who managed to avoid the deportation and to stay in Berlin and in Germany, most of them hid it or had fake documents confirming that they are German or Aryan. I think that you are familiar with this book of Leonard Gross called The Last Jew in Berlin, and he tells the stories of several Jews who managed to hide in Berlin with the help of courageous Germans. But this wasn't the story of Erich Langer. This is Professor Erich Langer, and I want to tell you on the very beginning that Erich Langer stayed in Berlin as Jew. He didn't deny that he's Jewish, with Jewish documents, and he continued to live in his luxury apartment in Charlottenburg in Berlin, all over the war at the Nazi time. And even he had a private practice in Alexanderplatz in Berlin, and he treated Jewish and non-Jewish patients all this time, all the Nazi time in Berlin. How he managed it? Okay, he was born in March 15, 1891 in Konojad, in a village near Strasbourg. It is in Western Prussia. Now it is in Poland. It's called now Brodnica. Langer studied medicine in Breslau and Freiburg, but spent his last semesters in Munich at the Ludwig Maximilian University, where he graduated in November 1914 as a Department of Dermatology in Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich. Is the biggest department of dermatology, I think, worldwide. The biggest, of course, in Germany. It has about 300 beds, 7 floors, only dermatology, only skin diseases. In January, after graduating, he served for 4 years as a frontline soldier until 1918, and he earned the Iron Cross because he was very brave in his military duty. He then spent 8 years with Avram Boch at the Rudolf Virchow Hospital before being named chief dermatologist at the Berlin Brit City Hospital. And in the 1920s, he wrote 2 textbooks in dermatology and many articles, more than 150 articles, many of them with Avram Boch. I must tell you briefly about Avram Boch. Avram Boch was one of the most important known dermatologists all over the world in the very beginning of the 20s of the last century. This is Avram Boch, and at the age of 38, was appointed director of Department of Dermatology at Rudolf Virchow. You know the Rudolf Virchow, the famous Rudolf Virchow, worked in this hospital. Now it's called Charité Hospital. It was, when Berlin was divided, it was on the eastern side, but today, of course, it came back to its glory, and this is one of the best departments of dermatology in Europe, in Charité Hospital in Berlin. He was director of the department for 27 years. He was the world's best-known skin doctor. In 1933, he was dismissed from his position in the hospital. He was sent to Theresienstadt and died there of dysentery on February 1943. In 1936, there was a World Congress in Budapest. He was there, and his colleagues from the United States asked him to come to the United States, but he said, my family is living in Germany for about at least 500 years. Nobody will touch me. And he went back to Germany, and then he died in Theresienstadt. This is Charité Hospital today. In 1924, he married Margaret, a Christian, a Lutheran, and in 1927, he became the medical director of new Department of Dermatology in Neukölln, a poor quarter in Berlin. For the first 5 years, his career proceeded, and he and his wife moved into an 8-room apartment in Charlottenburg, where he has also his private practice. He became a very respected member of Berlin and the German Dermatologic Society. In April 1934 was so-called the civil service reform. Jews removed from their jobs, including appointments and positions in university and public hospitals. In the same month, Jews were removed from the list of Kassenärzte. Kassenärzte, it means that the physicians, they are accepted by the medical insurance companies to take care on patients, and they were no longer allowed to treat patients. This provided many, of course, new jobs for Aryan physicians. In 1933, he was ejected from the office in his hospital because he was Jewish. He continued to work, as I said. He moved to Alexanderplatz, and he continues his private practice. And in October 1938, all Jewish physicians lost their license. A limited Jews, including Langer, who were named Krankenbehandlers. It means that they treated of the ill and allowed to continue treating Jews, but he continued to treat also non-Jews. Why he didn't leave Germany? It turns out that initially he planned to leave, but his greatest personal concern was his parents. He tried to leave to Sweden or United States, but he turned out by the German. He continued to be in Berlin. And until 3 years ago, I heard about this story years ago, about Professor Erich Langer, that he continued to work in Germany. But everyone said that it was a mystery, how he managed. Now, you can see this is his passport with a big J, Jude, and the name Israel was added to his name. You know that the Nazis asked every male to add Israel to his name and every female to add Sarah to her name. And this was his passport in March 41. This is a study that published in Clinics and Dermatology 3 years ago, and it shed new light on the life of Erich Langer in the years of the Nazi time. There are 5 key factors to people or to physicians to survive in Nazi Germany: having Christian spouse, being part Jewish, readiness faced extreme personal risk, having connection to powerful Nazi figure, or to be lucky. And we'll see that Erich Langer had all the 5. First of all, his wife was Christian, as I said, and she had many connections. She came from a very well-known family, and she had a lot of connections with authorities in Berlin and in Germany. And being part Jewish, it was a trick to declare to be illegitimate. Now, in 1942, his mother testified that during the time before Langer's birth, she had an affair, a love affair with Friedrich Kinsporn, an Aryan, and she had no sexual intercourse with her husband, and she claimed that Kinsporn is Langerhans' biological father, so that Langerhans is half Jewish, and he is illegitimate. Readiness to face extreme personal risk. After building was destroyed in the bombing in Charlottenburg, he moved to a new apartment in the district with the SS. Or he was very smart, because this was the last place to look for him, or he was extremely brave. It is not documented, but there are hints that he have connection to powerful Nazi figures. In December 1944, he was arrested following an informer that he continued to treat patients and also non-Jewish patients. And this drew attention of the authorities to his existence, but then he was lucky. The guard, he was one of all German patients of him, and he let him go, he released him. At this point, Langer went underground, and he apparently spent about 6 months living in a garden hut in the island, in one of the many lakes, the Tegel Lake in Berlin. Happy end, and the end of the journey. In July 1994, he returned to Berlin, and he resumed his directorship of the dermatology service, and he was of the founding father of the new dermatology in Germany after the war. In the summer of 1957, Margaret, his wife, died, and a few months later, he died unexpectedly in a golf play in Munich. This is Erich Langer. This picture was taken in the end of 1945 with his staff. Thank you very much for your attention.